Trigger warning, this podcast contains mature themes and discussions of cults, manipulation, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking, where we expose the dark side of control, manipulation, and the human stories behind them. I'm Anonymous Andrew, executive producer and investigator into cult dynamics and coercive control.
And I'm Melody, a cult survivor and advocate for awareness and healing.
This is Cultimatum. Welcome back to another episode of Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew. And tonight we have my co-host Melody with me. Melody, we have a special podcast tonight for our folks. Tell us who we have.
Well, today we're going to be continuing our conversation with Mary Byler, known on TikTok as the Amish Misfit. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, we do highly recommend that you go back and you start there to fully understand Mary's story and her journey out of the Amish community. Mary is a survivor, an author, and an activist who escaped the Amish at the age of 19 and after years of abuse, and later was shunned for speaking out. Today, we are finishing Mary's story and continuing this important conversation with her. Mary, welcome back to Cultimatum.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's very interesting that it happens to be February because, 22 years ago, I remember vividly when I was going to therapy and there was somebody driving me, and this person was offering safety planning in a way that spoke to me, that also gave me autonomy. I think it's so critical when people are in abusive situations that when they are adults, they are given autonomy and the ability to make decisions for themselves. But part of what this woman said to me was, "What can you live with?" And I have made this decision that I was going to leave, and we created a plan where I was going to escape. When I say I escaped, 22 years ago, I was supposed to get married to this good Amish boy. I mean, I don't know if he was good, but it was a young man. He was my age, so not like a minor at that point in time because I was 19. While I lived in 5 different settlements, inside of those settlements, we didn't practice Rumspringa. We didn't even call it Rumspringa. We would have said mostly like we went with the young folks. And what that meant was you were supposed to get married. You were supposed to get baptized at the right time. There were varying ages that people would get baptized at. The youngest person I know of ever to get baptized was 16, but that was not the norm. Everybody talked about it because it was outside of the norm. In the community that I was baptized in, the typical age was 17. And typically, even though you worked, your parents took all of your money until you were 21. So I didn't have money and I needed somebody to help me plan how I was going to escape while also allowing me to have the final say in my life. It's one of the things that I cannot stress how grateful I am for that woman because she gave me the opportunity to build a whole different life for me. And then what happened is February 16, 2004, at around 8 p.m., that's when I escaped. But I never got to get Rumspringa. I never got to go out and do whatever people think Rumspringa is. Like Rumspringa is often one of the most widely misunderstood things that people don't get. Because after I reported the abuse, there were a lot of people that said stuff to me that was really insensitive and stereotypical. And then they said, well, you didn't escape. You could have just left on Rumspringa, or you just left on Rumspringa. But how could I leave on Rumspringa if we didn't have that opportunity? And
Right.
So explain that to the folks that not every sect has that, because I think, and I thought that that was part of the entire Amish community, and you're telling us that it is not. It's part of different sects.
So that whole idea of going to live English, like, first off, like, I'm saying English because really that's what Amish people call number Amish people usually is English. I prefer using the term dominant culture, but dominant culture folks think that when Amish youth are out partying, that maybe that's like living English or living as part of dominant culture. While there are people that I know that left their Amish homes and they went and lived in dominant culture for a year or two, they are forever marked when they were forever marked when they went back. Like, it's not like you're known as somebody who left the church once upon a time,
Right.
and then you came back. I
Well,
know people that they did that on Rumspringa, and they were preached about in church. Whenever they came back to the church and were baptized, the ministers were constantly at their houses harassing them. They were constantly confessing in church. They were always in trouble with the church. I just have to ask if that's really an autonomous choice, because people think that Rumspringa gives you the ability to make an informed decision about whether you wanna be Amish or not. But is it really an autonomous decision when there's this threat of losing your family, different connections with your family? Because if you do not practice the Amish way of life according to the the norms inside of your community, your relationships will change.
so let's define what Rumspringa is, first of all, and how it
Well, let's
is
let's
done.
maybe define even what it isn't, because I can tell you I've watched a couple episodes of this reality show called Breaking Amish, which is supposed to be a show depicting Rumspringa, and it sounds like what Mary is saying is that that depiction is probably not accurate to any sect of Amish, and it is all Hollywood. Would that be correct?
The problem with Breaking Amish is they mix in some facts, and it's
It's
exploitative TV.
Mhm.
It's exploitative TV that misrepresents, what Amish culture is, and they also represent Mennonites that are not Amish, because Amish are not Mennonites and Mennonites are not Amish, and we have been beefing for over 330 years.
We
With
might
that being said, Rumspringa can mean different things, even for the types of Amish that you are. Like in Lancaster County, PA, they're going to have different, like they have gangs there. They have what they call gangs.
Mm,
That's not the norm for example, Holmes County, Ohio.
right.
And the other part is if you're not towing the line the way that you're supposed to according to the community norms, like you'll literally have preachers who will preach about you in church. So,
just to go back to the reality show quickly, on my other podcast, the dating podcast, I had on. I don't think it matters who it was, but it was a reality star from a famous reality TV show, and she came on, and I specifically asked her, I said, everybody wants to know, are these things fake? Are they scripted? Are you go in there? And she says 50-50, like you just said. I think you just said it was like 50-50. They will allow you to go and act it out. But if they think something will get better ratings or get better viewership, they will come in there and they will suggest that you do this. And of course, that one, it was more satiable. It was more geared towards sex. It was MILF Manor. If you ever
Mhm.
heard of that. So yeah, but it was
look, I'm pop culture impaired. I don't
yeah.
even play.
I am too.
I don't place a lot of
I never heard
value
of
on
this
TV.
reality show until they offered the guest to me, and then I looked it up and I actually watched one episode, and I was like, "This it's women who are sleeping with their boyfriend's sons. It's just stupid." But the
Oh,
whole point is that
oh.
it's fake.
Yeah.
It's it's not just in fake. It's the producers and executive
Sensationalized.
producers. They sensationalize it. They go in there and they
Uh-huh.
say, "Well, we'd like maybe if you pushed him a little harder, or maybe you kissed him a little less, or whatever." She told me it was like that, and so I
Right.
can only imagine what Rumspringa, how they is it still airing, or it was just like a one?
I don't this was a while ago. I don't even know if it's still on. I don't even know how many
Okay,
seasons it was. I caught like an episode and a half of it a long time ago, years ago. This was a long time ago. And it seemed fake. That's why I didn't keep watching it because I'm like, this
yeah.
doesn't seem real. It just seems
It
stupid.
didn't depict what and that's why I would like Mary to set the record straight. I'll
Right.
tell you what I heard was that when you hit a certain age, 15 or 16 or 17, I don't know what it is, that for 1 year, you're allowed to leave and go live someplace with the English, which, by the way, I didn't understand because we're not English. We fled England in 1776.
The
She's
point.
yes.
Okay, well, first off, the age varies according to whatever type of Amish you are. So, in some of the communities I lived in, for example, young folks would start going to the singings. We would have gatherings for the young folks specifically. And we would start going to the singing. Some of them would be 16 and some of them would be 17. Some of them would be 16 and a half. Some of them would be 17 and a half. And then dating practices also varied. So it really depends on what specific flavor of Amish you're talking about.
So,
Interesting.
are we to understand then that the sects that maybe do practice some form of Rumspringa, this would be something that would theoretically happen before you were baptized?
Yes.
Okay.
Theoretically, it would happen before you're baptized, but you can be baptized and not be married. And
Right.
for the record, like, I just want to say that there's a lot of people who think that, um, Rumspringa is really living English, and they're like, "Oh, these Amish youth are out here having these parties and, sex, drugs, rock and roll." So if you're taught that the outside world is filled with sex, drugs, rock and roll, then that's gonna make you go to hell because if you play that music backwards, what's gonna happen?
The devil talks
Anyways,
to you. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
devil talks to you, right? But anyways, if you're taught that that's all that is in the outside world, wouldn't you say that's a very limited viewpoint of what dominant culture Americans are? Because there's so much more than sex, drugs, and rock and roll in dominant culture America.
Oh, a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As a
Yeah.
matter of
That's a
fact,
very
in
narrow view.
in 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 the English community, which the regular Americans, adolescence goes through their own Rumspringa. They from 14, I remember going from 15 to 18, we tried alcohol, we tried weed, we tried, for me, I turned out to be the alcoholic in the family. But 75% of or more don't. They go out and they drink, they smoke that weed, they whatever, and then they go off to college and they get 3.9 averages, and they go up become lawyers and doctors and or trade skills or something. So I think there's a lot of us that do go out and party and
Right.
just it's part of like what's that word?
It's part of exploring the world and figuring
Right.
out who you are and what you wanna be and what kind of
Right.
person you wanna be, and so you go and you have these experiences, and then the other part is when you start talking about parenting styles, often people who grow up in high control religious groups, they end up being authoritarian parents, and when they're authoritarian parents, those children are going to rebel at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually. I mean, I've never pretended that I was a
Yep.
good Amish person.
Right.
I've never made a good Amish person. But as far as, like, when you have parents who are authoritative versus authoritarian, you're gonna get less of that. It's not saying that kids don't need to explore, it's saying that you give kids a framework to safely explore.
Right.
Safely. That's interesting. That's a good word.
Safely explore.
Yeah.
Well, that you need to teach them how to give themselves boundaries and to know what's safe and what's a good choice and what's not a good choice. And sometimes you have to make bad choices to know what good choices are, right?
But you also don't do that by bringing the hammer down and by
Right.
publicly shaming and humiliating your
Correct.
Oh, right.
kids. That's
No.
or
No.
and by, like, demanding all of these things and then exploiting your children's labor when they're young adults and keeping their money until they're 21 because your children owe you. Like, that's not how
Yeah, no,
you do
that's a little
that. That's
backwards.
inappropriate.
I
Yes.
remember one of my children. I'm not even going to say how many I have, but I have children, young, they're all adults now. But one of them, when they were younger, actually all of them, did something, and he got into a car accident, and he was on something, and I took him aside, and I said, "Your dad's an alcoholic, and I'll just leave it at that. But there was other diseases in
Mhm.
the family, and I said, "You can never do this again." But I didn't punish him. I didn't, just take. First of all, it was his own car. He bought his own car. He was of age. He was 22, I think. And just to your point, I didn't chastise him. I just said, "You just learned a lesson, a very serious lesson. You lost the car. He totaled the car,
Mhm.
and you did something that you put in your body that you should not have put in your body and drive, blah, 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 blah." And when I was growing up, I didn't get that lecture. Um, I was in the Nancy Reagan era, "Don't do drugs," or what was it? "Just say no." And
Oh.
yeah,
'Cause that's so effective.
yeah,
'Cause
it
abstinence
wasn't.
only is totally it totally works,
No.
even
Uh
though all the data suggests otherwise, but
Yeah. So,
yeah.
well, that didn't work for me. So, while I do have 10 years of recovery now, but back then it was a disaster. So, but
Yeah.
would you have any statistic being out now that maybe you've done some research or not? How many of them do come back? The ones that go out, how many come back? Do we know?
We don't know.
We don't
I
know.
don't think that there's any good data on that, but it's also really difficult to do ethical research within Amish communities because first off, we are taught from birth, like the world wants to take our children, and also we
Mm.
fled Europe because we were being persecuted, and so the government doesn't need to be in our business, and that brings me right to deconstruction. Here's a fun fact for you. When I was in my young early teens, I read the Bible and I started reading about how you're so the obrigate umatonse. So bad is it, and there's like a whole saying about it. You're so the obrigate umatonse, so bad is this me, which roughly translated means, render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's, and you should obey the government. It's Romans, I think. um, where you should obey the government because the government is appointed by God. That's where I was like, wait, what? Why are we fighting these septic systems? Why are we fighting this and that? We can do
Mm,
that. Why are we fighting this? But my
that is
stepfather
interesting.
told me it's because I don't have an eggplant hanging between my legs. I mean, really
Oh.
what he said was,
Uh,
"Well, women can't comprehend that passage correctly."
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna make I'd like to make a little bridge here. Let's build a little bridge. Last week on part 1, you said something or alluded to that the Amish culture community is not a cult. And you well, I'm gonna leave it there. And then
No.
correct me if I misspoke.
No, I didn't say they're not a cult. I said I don't call them
Call
a
them thank you. Okay.
yes.
And and then there's a follow-up. You said, "But there's cult-like behaviors?"
Yes.
Yes, okay. Now I understand that Rumspringer, you wanna make a connection to that.
Yes, because what often happens is people have this idea about Rumspringa and they think that everybody has an opportunity to make an informed decision. And then there's all this like feel good stuff that gets said about it. When I talk about my life experiences, I was tortured as a child by various people. there were multiple crimes and multiple people that were prosecuted for crimes. There were other people that were never prosecuted for crimes. I'm not looking at a specific state that starts with a P and ends with a A at all whatsoever. I would never do such a thing. But I digress. You know, they
Give a trip.
what? I'm not at all. I would never call them up. But anyways, I digress. The part that made me stop, and I'm 40,000 words into a book about why I don't call the Amish a cult. How do I feel like I'm not even halfways into writing the book because I'm looking at the literature that I have collected as evidence, the things that I grew up with, including, like, for example, there's a book called Joas Fights for Freedom. And as my first cousin's kid, Schwartz cousin, I don't think we use that in English, but it's my first cousin once removed, something like that. As she said, that book is essentially a manual for children who are being abused to tell them how to suffer appropriately as they're being abused
Mm,
silently.
mm.
And then there's, like, other books. We have The Martyr's Mirror. It's called The Bloody Theater of the Martyr's Mirror. There's the book that somebody that's related to me on my maternal side wrote, uh, that's like 2 inches thick, and it's in High German. There's the fact that our Bibles and our Old Testaments and New Testaments, like, they were all in High German. So some of it is I have to translate some things to write about it. Some of
Mm,
it is examining even the school literature that is being published by Pathway Publishers. Some of it is also just having the energy to talk about it.
yeah,
And then how can I sum up all of that into a 10-minute conversation or a 20-minute conversation?
right.
I don't think it's possible.
No.
So if I make the claim that Amish people are a cult, then I feel like I have all of these reasons about this cult-like behavior. But if I make that claim, then I have to be able to
Back it up.
support that because
But do you?
people that were never Amish come out in droves when you attack their beloved Amish people that they have looked at. I've had multiple people tell me things like, well, n as they tear up, visibly tear up, that now I have to change my whole worldview because I always thought as a woman, I could go live Amish and then I would be safe.
Wow. That's a pretty narrow view, number 1. And number 2, that is I to say that to somebody who's actually lived it is seems very they're diminishing your reality with their fantasy.
I think what's even more priceless is usually they say that after I tell them they're free to go look up the court cases.
Mm.
It's out there if they wanna go inform themselves about that.
I do think there is a certain amount of the English or American society that probably sensationalizes the idea of the Amish living because it seems so pure and clean and innocent from the outside. But as we know, most most cults, I'm gonna call it a cult. This is just me talking, but most cults do want to control the narrative that is given to the outside world, and the deepest, darkest secrets that go on in these sects, in these cults, are always hidden. It's always hidden.
I want to go back to what I think Melody said about the American people see the Amish as this nice community, and I've told this story once or twice before interviewing somebody from ex-Amish community. When I grew up, I was in Pennsylvania a lot, and I was actually traveled to Ohio, and my dad took us all over, and we would see the Amish all the time in their buggies going down the highway, and I was fascinated by that, and I would always ask my dad all about that, and he goes, "Oh, that's a population of people that live it in a different kind of way." I don't exactly remember because it was 55 years ago. So I was like young, but I remember just that he saw them as a peaceful part of society that did no harm. And that's what I was taught. And I'd never had, of course, at that age, I wasn't thinking cults. And I didn't know that in 45, 50 years, I'd be running a cult podcast and I would be talking about this. But I just found what Melody said about the American population, I don't think they know. And I think what's happening is this cult explosion that's going on right now in the country with all the documentaries. The podcasts are blowing up. Melody just did some research on podcasts on one of the podcast things that count the podcast. We're number 50 out of 100 of the cult podcasts. That's just 100. Melody, how many more were there? I mean, the point I'm
I don't
getting
know.
at is that
I just know FeedSpot said that we were 50 out of 100 of the top ones. So,
but there's probably another 100 on top of that. So the idea is that America is starting to get fascinated or maybe fed up with, or maybe they're starting to perk their heads up and go, wait a minute, all these cults are going on in our backyard and we don't know anything about this. You know, we heard about Johannesburg and Waco and all the horrible tragedy ones where people were killed, mass quantities, but they don't know about the Amish. And
But people have this idea that cults are gonna be like Waco, or I'm thinking of the guy who got, like, people to die by suicide, like a mass suicide. I'm thinking about that one specifically.
Jim
People think
Jones.
cults are Jim Jones, that's the one.
Yeah.
But, like, people think cults are gonna be like that. All of them are gonna be like that. But the thing is when you have different people groups, sometimes they enact similar things, but they use different structures to accomplish the same goals. But often it's parallel goals.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it is very profitable for people to look the other way when the group itself is controlling the narrative. Because if you
Right.
have
yeah,
a narrative like TLC is over here making Breaking Amish and however many other Amish shows, like right now they got this new one that just came out that's called Suddenly Amish, and I can't even it's about people who they kinda decide to go join the Amish, but
Oh,
here's the problem with that. We were never like the military, we didn't recruit members, like, the type of Amish I was in all 5 of the settlements I lived in, we didn't recruit people, we were like, "Oh, no, we don't do that. We're not worldly like that. We're not like those people,"
right.
because there's that mentality, right?
good
Us
question.
versus them.
I got a question. So you said that forget this show, but this show went and sent some people to join the Amish. If
Yes.
I walked, let's say that I don't know, I was broke and I don't know, I was down on my luck and whatever, and I just needed a new way of life, and I just stumbled. I went to Pennsylvania and I walked around and looking for Amish people, and I knocked on some door one day and said, "Hey, my name is Andrew, and I'm done with money and blah blah blah. Can I join your community?" What would they say to me?
Okay, so that's gonna depend on the flavor of Amish that you are, and it's also gonna depend on your ability to learn to speak our language, to read our Bible, etcetera. I do know that there are some Amish that now read English Bibles, but where I grew up, we read it would have been like we
What
had somebody who joined.
would they teach me though?
Yeah, we would teach you,
Okay.
but, like, we don't go out and evangelize. Like, we're not
Right.
gonna go
No,
recruit
no.
members. We don't do that.
But
You know,
Jehovah's Witnesses does, and the Mormons do, and Latter-day Saints do, and
but the way that we shine our light to the world is by our way of life. That's, by our clothing, our dress, our
do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, they're setting an example. Look how we dress, look how we act, and we're
yes,
peaceful, and we don't pollute the earth, and I don't think that's one of
we're
their things, but
that's not even true. You you know what? Okay,
I
so
know, that was stupid to say, I know.
we don't pollute the air. What are you talking at? I
Go ahead.
cannot.
Go ahead.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. More Cultimatum is coming up. Let's move on to the next subject because
We
I
don't
just put a big foot in my mouth. I know.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're not gonna talk about Amish people
Oh.
that crop dust, okay, or pay somebody to crop dust. We're not gonna talk about that,
Or
okay?
pay
Okay.
people to drive their cars for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're
Right.
or they buy a phone and put it in the neighbor's name, like, we're not gonna talk about that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
also, I did want to correct you, Andrew, when you said you were going to knock on a door and say you didn't want to have anything to do with money anymore. The Amish do use money.
Yeah, we do use money. So,
The
like
English money?
yeah!
Oh,
Well,
so you
how
can't associate with the English, but you'll take our money.
Of course we'll take our money. You know what I told my dentist
Money is
last week?
the
No,
universal language.
you know what I told my dentist? Not last week, last month. Last month, I told my dentist, I literally looked at my dentist and I said, "You know what? The way you talk about this, if I was an Amish person, I'd look at you and be like, 'Oh, yeah, I'm gonna get some good money off of you.'"
Yeah. Interesting. I just find it so can you have a bank account?
There
Or
Yeah,
do they keep
like,
the cash under the mattress like we
there
used to?
there's Amish people that have bank accounts.
Okay. You see, this is the ignorance that I think America has, and Andrew, that we just don't know,
And Andrew.
and we just don't know what and you said it early, and you said it last week. There's different sects, and so every sect has their own rules and different protocols.
Mhm.
But I don't know. My understanding was you couldn't have electricity, you couldn't have a radio, you couldn't have
you
drive a
know,
car. You
okay, I did observe something last summer, and I just want to know if this is a thing or if it's just by chance. It was actually when I was visiting my mom in Ohio, and we went to an ice cream shop, and there were some Amish there, and not one of them were wearing shoes. They were all barefoot. And I was just like trying to figure it out. Like, do they not believe in shoes? Can they not afford shoes? Do they not want shoes? Do you know anything about that? I mean, this is kind of random, but
Look, when I tell you I escaped, I also mean I escaped being barefoot and pregnant every year for the last 22 years. Thank you.
so they
you
do
mean
walk
by
around
literally
barefoot.
barefoot.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean by literally barefoot, because and
Okay.
that also depends on, like, the type of Amish you are, but we do wear shoes. It's just some of us go barefoot,
Okay.
and we went
Okay.
barefoot because we were poor.
Okay.
A lot.
Okay. Mary, let's move on to I think there were some other things you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to last week. So I think one of them was your deconstruction, right?
Oh, yeah, I started talking about that,
Yes,
and
let's
then
go
we
back to that.
okay, like, one of the things that happened for me is I decided that I was gonna go join I was gonna not join, but I was gonna go attend this church that was real close to me, in 2005. Okay, so I attended this church, and the first time I attended, there was, like, this love bombing thing, and I
Mm.
noticed that the women were all dressed a certain way, and I was like, "Oh, this is kinda weird, but okay." I went back the second time, and somebody, like, oh, yeah, they talked to me a little bit, but the third time, they talked to me about my jeans, and that's when I was like, "Okay, no, we can't do this. If you're gonna have a problem with me wearing jeans, no,
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
not
sure that was
interested."
I'm sure that was triggering based on where you came from. You wanted the freedom to be able to wear what you wanted.
And so I was like, "This place is not for me. This is not a church for me." And then I spent a little while going to various different churches. I'll tell you, the GP service wait, I went to a Catholic church service. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
The thing about the Catholic church service, okay, so they did their mass in Latin, which cracked me up because there are Amish people that do not understand High German, and because of that, like, when they read from the Bible during our church services or a formal, like, wedding or funeral, or when we do the morning prayer and the evening prayer, which, by the way, we prayed every morning on our knees before we ate breakfast, after we ate breakfast, before we ate lunch, after we ate lunch, before we ate supper, after we ate supper, and then we had another kneeling prayer after before we went to bed. That was just a regular day.
What did you pray for?
Oh, we have like a Gebetbuch, a prayer book,
Okay.
and it was in High German. And I realized when I went to the Catholic Church how familiar that felt.
Oh, really?
And part of it was the using different languages, the kneeling in the pews. It was different kneeling
Mhm.
because they didn't kneel the same way, and they had pews and they had a church. We had church in our homes, but it felt very familiar. And I was like, "Oh, so now we know why we go all the way back to Constantine and the Catholic Church, and we always talk about our ministry talks about the Catholic Church." I was like, "Oh, now I understand that. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's for me." And then I went to this church in California, and I was sitting in the service, and I walked out of the service because I could not. There was just this message of women shouldn't incite men to lust after them. And to
Mm,
me, that was a
mm,
line.
mhm.
And I just I just could not find a church that didn't feel like it was overtly being harmful to people. So then I stopped going to church after that. And
Say
then I
that.
started studying this program with a former friend of mine. And when she told me that I chose to be born into this family,
Oh.
I chose to experience the trauma that I experienced
Mm.
during my childhood. That was when I was like, "Okay, bye."
And when did you choose this? In the womb or
Before I was even born, I chose that family. My
so when you were
consciousness
the egg or
chose.
the daddy's
No,
sperm
before I
or
even was an egg or a sperm, I
uh,
chose to be
uh,
that egg or a sperm. I'm sorry, but that is one of the most victim blaming messages I have ever heard in my life.
so I just I
And that's why we're not friends anymore.
my
Mm.
skin crawls when I hear people say the dumbest, stupidest. Mm.
We chose this. We chose this. Okay. Okay. Like, so what you're saying is, I chose to live like this. Okay. I chose to be a child that was I don't even have words to describe what I experienced. Like, really, there's so much, and I don't think I need to delve into that.
Yeah.
But anyways, so there was that. So then I started reading some Buddhist texts. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe. And then I started looking into some after that. I was like, well, I don't think Buddhism is for me. I don't even remember why. I just was like, no, that's not for me.
Very hard Buddhist. I tried it and it's very dedicated. Like,
It requires too much meditation, and
yeah.
I'm fine with meditation, but
Yeah.
Smaller
not
doses.
like it really felt like it's just another person or another group trying to get me to comply with their norms.
Mhm.
And for me to belong to this, then I have to comply with all of these directives.
It might even be, we might have to look into this one day. And I'm going to reserve calling the Buddhist a cult, the Buddhist religion a cult, but they have cult-like behaviors. So anyway, that's a different
Anyway,
topic.
so there was the Buddhist part. And then there was the part where I identified as a pagan for a while because I started studying paganism.
Interesting. Okay.
And then what happened is somebody tried to convince me that I should join Wicca. And when I studied Wicca, I was like, nope, I'm out.
Wicca is the white, not the white, the witches that are Wicca. I remember I have a friend that was in Wicca, and I haven't talked to her in years, but it's WICCA, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What does that stand for? Okay, before I continue taking us down the rabbit hole, Wicca is not an acronym. It is the name of a modern day religion.
But here's the thing about Wicca. They have very specific rules.
Yeah.
And those rules, it felt like, again, this is just another organized religion. And when you went to events, like they always expected donations and, like that whole thing.
Right.
And it was like, if I wanted to do this, I might as well go join a Christian church and be tithing.
Right. The same monkey in a different suit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
And I can relate because I tried to go to some different churches after I left my cult, and I went in with my guard up. I won't deny that, but I just couldn't get comfortable because everything triggered me. I was just like, "Oh no. You're telling me how to pray? You're telling me what that Bible scripture means? You're telling me that you want my money?" Everything triggered me. I was just like, "I can't do this." I went a few times. I was like, "Nope, not for me."
Well, you know what, Melody, Mary's setting me up for my final question.
She is.
And so she is. And we didn't ask her last week because we weren't done.
Yes.
But I want to make sure Mary has more. We have a few minutes. I want Mary to finish her. But Mary, there's a question I'm going to ask you, and I think did we tell you what the question was?
I think so.
I think you did. I don't remember quite.
But you're kind of traveling down that path now. So I would like you to finish wrapping up what you're. So you went to the Buddhists, you went to the Wiccans, you went to the pagans. Where'd you go next?
Where did I go next?
Then
I was invited to an XJW group on Facebook by Emma Miller. She runs a pretty significant XJW group. And then I had all of these conversations about cult-like behavior. And it was one of the few places where I felt like I could say things and people could challenge it, and usually people were a lot more understanding about my perspective or even compassionate about everything that I've experienced. I've made some wonderful friends there. I've gotten to meet some of them in person, to be honest. It's pretty incredible. But it was one of those things where I had the freedom to explore some of the beliefs, and that's where I realized, like, really, I don't believe in organized religion. I don't even know if I believe in a god or a deity. I find comfort in ritual.
Well, you just answered my question.
I find comfort in ritual. I really do. I think that ritual can bring comfort to your nervous system, especially when you experience certain things in life, and there's certain things that help you cope with things, but that doesn't have to look a specific way as long as you're not harming other people or yourself. Then who cares
agree.
if I go light a candle or if I go get on my knees and pray?
Yeah.
And why do I have to pray for certain things? And why do I have to light a candle for certain things? And why? So to me, I just felt like every religion that I sought out, they kind of had similar rules,
Protocols.
Well, yes, and
protocols,
and
what
it
have
almost
you.
seemed like motives, similar motives. That's how I felt. I'm like,
Yes.
everybody
Yeah.
has a damn motive here, and I don't wanna play this game. That's why I got out of the organized religion,
Yeah.
society of
So
life. I was just like, "That is not for me. I can't do it. I
So
see through the
you
facade."
you basically just answered the question, but you didn't know what the question was. So I'm going to not repeat the question. I'm going to ask you the question and let you phrase it better because you answered the question. At the end of
Okay.
every episode, our broadcasts, Melody and I each ask them a question. My question is and always is, where are you in your faith today? So you were brought up Amish, and you went out, you left, and you went out and tried all these different other types of religions. All these years out now, what do you believe in faith?
I'm an atheist.
Thank you.
So I don't
Okay.
think there's sufficient evidence out there to convince me that there is a God out there. And if there is a God out there and that God is watching or that deity is watching everything that happens in the world, then why the fuck doesn't that God give a fuck about the crimes against humanity that are ongoing? If that God is all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, why doesn't that God care about those crimes?
I
I can
am
relate.
100% behind you. I'm like, yes, I'm like, that's me. But yeah, I think it should if you scroll the channels of TikTok or Instagram, and I'm starting to follow some of these guys. There's a bunch of scientists who are trying to prove the Big Bang, and they're trying to prove religion is bad, blah blah blah. And then there's the others who are trying to prove that there is a God. Melody, we should have a debate one night with somebody
Oh,
like
I don't
Mary.
know.
Yeah, yeah, that could get explosive. Okay.
We
But I would be interested because that debate, God or no God, religion or no religion, has been going on for 2,000 years. So it's not a new question or new.
No.
Okay, we got to begin to wrap up. So Mel, ask your question.
My question for you, Mary, I'm gonna specifically say, let's say there's a young Amish girl that is sneaking a radio and she's listening to this and or sneaking online or whatever the case may be, and she's listening to
a
this
phone,
podcast.
a
Yes, and she's a
smartphone.
smartphone, there you
She's
go.
got a generator in the backyard and she's listening
And
to the right. Go ahead.
and she's in a similar situation to you where you were, and she's looking to get out, or she's looking to escape, or she's having doubts. What would be your words of advice to her? Or him? That could be him,
Yeah, because abuse doesn't just happen to young girls, or it
right?
also happens to children, and it happens
Yes,
in every people group. You
absolutely.
you you just you get that. So what I would say is that you're not alone. Even if it feels like you're alone, you are not alone. There are people who will care, and there are people who will help you. But you have to find the right people that will help you so that you can safely escape.
Yes.
And you are good enough for that. You deserve to be safe in the world. Everybody deserves safety.
Very good advice. Mary, we cannot thank you enough for coming back and finishing this conversation with us and educating us and our audience on some of the maybe myths and misconceptions of the Amish community and in general and you're a joy. You're just a delight to speak with on top of that. So thank you so much for coming back.
And I would like to say thank you too also, and I would like to just mention, while Mary came back and we had a lighthearted conversation, I think we got a little deeper into some of the myths and misconceptions, but underneath it all, and I know Mary doesn't want to focus on this, but she went through some really, really difficult trauma, and she's willing to come talk about it, about her experience leaving the Amish, escaping, which I learned last week, and I just can't begin to imagine what it was like for you, and I'll never know. And I just wish America would wake up and understand that there's millions of people out there in your shoes or not in your shoes. If we learn that you don't always have shoes, that see what I'm saying there. We can
Yes.
joke about it, but it's serious enough that we need somebody to wake up and like stop. We learned that law enforcement is looking the other way on a lot of these cults, or they're being paid off on a lot of these cults, and it's got to stop. And I'm not saying the Amish, I'm just saying in general. So, Mary, thank you very much. And thank you for your sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Once again, we want to thank Mary so much for coming on the show and just having a conversation with us, actually educating us on a lot of different myths about the Amish. I do appreciate that because I do think there are, and all these reality shows that depict things that aren't reality, which the irony, right? Reality show not being real.
Not even reality shows. Like I said, when I was growing up, I stumbled upon them touring the United States. My dad was in the
Right.
army, and we drove across the country, and I saw them, and we questioned. And my dad was the type of guy that would pull the car over, get up, and walk up to them and talk to them. And he was
Right.
very odd like that, in a respectful way. Like he would come
Right.
up and
Just curious and
whatever.
friendly.
I also have relatives that live in Pennsylvania that
Mm.
live around I should say, not around the corner, around the mountain. They live in mountains up in
Right.
that area. And they have an small Amish community that does a lot of woodworking. And my sister has a barn where they keep their animals, and the Amish came and built the barn. But I still have this misconception as to I'm learning that they're not this very so nice small little community of people who keep to themselves and pray, and they can be a horrible
Yes.
community which is what Mary was trying to say.
Right.
So
And let's just say we're not saying every sect of Amish has
no,
abuse
no.
has abuse going on, but there are obviously sects of Amish that have abuse going on that they're keeping hidden because
Yeah.
they don't want
eh,
to and involve the outside law enforcement.
yeah, and the same could be said for the Catholic Church or any church that
Yes,
is
absolutely, Andrew.
not hurting little boys or girls. You can go to the white little house in the corner of the town and
Right.
have a perfectly nice pastor. And so no, it's not every
Yes.
religion. But
Yes.
the bad apples are making the whole rest of the bunch, and they're starting to rot the other
Yes.
whatever. You
Yes,
get me. And
absolutely. And there's
yeah.
bad in every sect of society. There's good and bad in everything. So, but it was very, very entertaining, and I'm glad it was so lighthearted. And Mary said afterwards that she enjoyed, and it felt like a conversation, and we felt that way too. We actually just what a joy, what a joy just to talk to her
Yeah.
and be
Go
educated
watch
by
her.
her.
For the audience, go watch her YouTube video. We'll put, I think you're going to put in the show links, show notes.
I don't know. I don't know if that'll be in the show notes or not. It's up to her what link she wants in the show notes, but
Okay. If she gives us that link, she did an interview with Soft White Underbelly, which is a production company. And it was a very difficult interview to watch. And if
yeah.
you go watch that and then you listen to our podcast, you will hear two different Marys. And
Yes.
I just wanted to bring that up.
Yes.
So
We got a
I don't
much
think she's
more
opposed.
lighthearted, fun-loving Mary. I mean,
But with the same
she got serious a couple of times, but
that was the point I was going to make. Yeah, she was lighthearted, but she wanted to make sure that we understood that the trauma she went through was real,
yes,
and that her mission is real, and she's got a message to carry. So,
yes, for
um,
sure.
but if people you want, you could just I think just Google her
Yeah.
Mary Byler
Her
on
name with the
YouTube, and
soft
you can
white
find the video.
underbelly, you can find it. If it's not in the show notes,
Yeah,
and I don't know if she'll want that in the
yeah.
show notes or not, that's really gonna be completely up to her.
Okay,
But
she'll let you know.
yes. So, Mary, thank you once again for coming on the show and sharing. I'm going to say your knowledge and your experiences with us. As always, thank you for listening to Cultimatum. We truly appreciate your support as we work to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. It helps more people discover the podcast, creating a greater awareness. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep tuning in to our latest episodes.
You can also follow Cultimatum on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for extra content and updates.
And be sure to join our Facebook community, Cultimatum Podcast, where we continue the conversations and keep you posted when new episodes drop.
And if you're a cult survivor looking for additional support and connection, we invite you to join the Facebook group Cult Escape and Healing.
You can also find more information about the show, including our full legal disclaimer, on our websites at cultimatumpodcast.com or anonymousandrewpodcaststudios.com.
And if you have a story related to cults or human trafficking that you'd like to share, you can reach us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to support the show, you can do that by using the link in the show notes called Buy Us a Cup of Coffee. Your support helps cover production costs and allows us to keep bringing these important stories to light.
And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.